So welcome everybody. My name is John Smith. I'm a Heartfulness practitioner, certified Heartfulness meditation trainer, certified level 1 350 hours yoga teacher, and I'm here with Dr. Elizabeth Denley, who is also a certified Heartfulness meditation trainer and also the chief in charge of the Heartfulness magazine editor. So welcome to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, John, and hi everybody. It's good to be here with you all.
Yeah. Welcome. So welcome everyone. I'd just like to make an acknowledgement to country, just to acknowledge the original custodians of the land, to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and just give our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And hopefully that this program will help towards reconciliation in some way towards that. So we'll just ask everyone to maybe do a little check-in is what we like to do. So just if you like to just find a comfortable seat or just find yourself comfortably seated, have a little gaze in front, or if you wish to close your eyes, you can close your eyes down. Just let the energy in your body just settle a little bit and just let yourself relax and just have a little gauge about how you're feeling, you know, and maybe you can sort of gauge that from a 1 to 10. If you're not feeling too good, you'll be down in maybe the 2s or 3s. If you're feeling really good, you might be up in 9s, 8s or 9s. Or if you're somewhere in between, just maybe take a little gauge about how you feel just currently at this moment. And then when you're ready, just gently open your eyes. And if you like, you can just post in the chat. You can do it anonymously if you want, or you can post it as who you are. You might just say maybe how you're feeling currently at this stage. If it's if you're sort of in the lower end or you're in the higher end of feeling good or not feeling so good, you can just put it in the chat there. We'll just see how everyone's feeling. So I don't think there's anyone responding there. Okay, someone's just come in about a 5. That was Emma. So thank you, Emma. So you're feeling about a 5. So probably been a busy day, a bit of a stressful one maybe. So you're probably looking to unwind a bit. And Jo says that she's on a 5 too. Thank you for that. So thank you for sharing where you're feeling at this moment. I'm probably feeling kind of okay. I'm probably 6 or 7, I think, myself. So I'm feeling not too bad. So someone says there, Michael, not too great. Emerging from, gastro bug. The last 36 hours, maybe 3 or 4 are tired. Okay, so hopefully tonight's session might help you bring yourself up a little bit. And someone said that there are 7. So, okay, some of us, you know, best around the 7s, some of us in the 5s, and some's a bit lower who's not feeling too well, but have a bit of a bug there. So yeah, so let's see what tonight's session can bring about for us as we go through the session. So the first thing that we'd like to do is just to go through a little practical session right now, which I'll guide you through. So we're going to go through a little bit of mindful breathing, and then relaxation, and then into the ocean of peace meditation. But one thing I'd like to also do is just to give a bit of a background into Heartfulness Institute. We've been registered in Australia since 1990 and offering the Heartfulness practices freely available to Australia and to the community. We're a not-for-profit organisation. And so we offer these practices for free. It's a meditation practice known as Raja Yoga, or the King of Yogas. And Elizabeth just sort of shared up there the sort of that Ashtanga yoga, where we sort of come in towards the meditation practices of Patanjali's yoga spectrum. And our headquarters are based in Telangana, in Kanashantivanam in India. And that's where our world headquarters are. And we're based in over 130 countries around the world. And we have over, I think, 100,000 plus trainers. And so if you're willing to connect with us after this session and you'd like to learn a little bit more about Heartfulness practices, please feel free to reach out to us. Either you can email australia@heartfulness.org.au, or you could even email me myself, which is john.smith@volunteer.heartfulness.org.au. And you can connect with us at any time after these sessions. So let's find ourselves comfortably seated. Just allow your hands to come down onto your lap, shoulders to relax, and either finding a gaze in front or just allow the eyes to gently close. Just bring your awareness into your body to start with, maybe noticing your feet on the floor, how they feel, possibly your legs into the chair, maybe where you feel your body pressing up against the chair and the seat, where you might feel a little bit of coolness around the body, maybe a bit of warmth around the body. And just start that mindfulness of the body, just to become aware of your body and how you physically feel. And then gently bring your awareness into your breath, and especially at the nasal passage, just where we gently breathe in and out through the nasal passage. And just noticing that breath gently flow in and gently flow out at the nasal passage. Maybe noticing the coolness of the breath as we breathe in and the warmth of the breath as we breathe out. And just following that breath from the beginning all the way through to the end as we breathe in, and just following the breath from the beginning all the way through to the end as we breathe out. So just bringing that mindfulness of breath into our practice. You may notice that one nasal passage of the nose might be more open, available as we breathe in and breathe out, maybe the left or the right side. So just observe that. If it is the left side, it's just meaning that that's the more passive energy, what we call the Chandra energy. Or if it's the right side, it's more the sun energy. So you'd be a bit more active. That's the sympathetic system being a bit more active. And if it's the left side, it'll be the parasympathetic being a bit more active. So just noticing how that feels, which side might be more dominant at this stage, and maybe noticing it might change during the practice this evening. And then just bring your awareness now down into your abdomen and just feeling that breath gently flowing into the abdomen as we gently breathe in. And just feeling the abdomen gently come back towards the spine as we gently breathe out. And just noticing the space that the air takes up within the body as we breathe in. Noticing the change of the shape of the body. And noticing the change of the shape of the body as we breathe out. So we learn to breathe deeply into the belly. That's a very good way to start to allow ourselves to switch into the parasympathetic system. That's the rest and digest mode. And just allowing yourself to gently start to settle into the rest and digest mode as we start to relax. And just bring your awareness down towards your feet. You might just like to wiggle the toes a little bit there. Allow the toes to relax. And just allowing your feet to feel that connection to country, to earth, to Mother Earth, and just allowing that healing energy of the earth to come into the soles of the feet, relaxing the feet and the ankles. And allowing that healing energy to gently move up into the calves, into the shins, up into the knees. Relaxing the knees. And allowing that healing energy to gently move into the upper legs, now into the thighs. Relaxing the back of the legs, relaxing the sit bones and the buttocks, relaxing the hips. And just feeling that healing energy now in the tail, tip of the tailbone, and just feeling it tippy-toeing gently up into the lower back and just relaxing the lower back and the abdomen. So we relax the abdomen, just allowing that breath to naturally flow in and out as we gently breathe in and out of the belly. And then just allowing that healing energy now to gently tippy-toe its way up into the upper back. Relaxing the back, relaxing the chest. And relaxing the neck and the shoulders. Allow the neck and shoulders to become soft. Almost to feel as if the energy is drooping down gently towards the floor. And just feeling that healing energy now gently move down into the upper arms, relaxing the upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, and the fingers. Just feeling the fingers relaxed. Maybe sensing that sense of life, that prana, as we call it, that life force within your fingers, within your palms. And allowing it to gently to move back up through the wrists, back up through the arms, back into the back of the neck and shoulders, and then relaxing the back of the head. Relaxing the top of the head. Relaxing the forehead. Relaxing the temples and the eyes. Just giving a little moment here to really allow the eyes to relax and soften. And relaxing the skin around the face, muscles of the face, lips, tongue, and the jaw. And just bring your awareness into your breath once again, noticing any variation that you might notice from the breath that when we first started already, or maybe noticing any variation in your body physically, or maybe even emotionally inside yourself, noticing any change. And just allowing yourself to allow that change to absorb into you a little deeper. And we're going to move into a little meditation known as the Ocean of Peace meditation. So just imagine yourself sitting on the edge of the ocean of peace. Almost like as if you were sitting at the riverbank where we start to feel the ripples of the water gently starting to roll over the body. And just allowing these ripples of the ocean of peace to gently ripple over the body. And as we feel those ripples gently coming over the body, just allow those ripples of peace to gently wash away any heaviness, any impurities that we might have picked up during the day, any stress. Just feeling those very light waves, ripples of peace, just gently rolling over the body and just allowing the body to be cleansed of these impurities. Keep the shoulders relaxed, face relaxed. As we continue allowing those waves of peace just to gently roll over the body, maybe noticing again with awareness how that starts to feel for you. As we start to let go of the day's troubles, concerns, and worries. If you start to feel yourself relaxing into this practice, it's quite nice to know. And just allow yourself to feel that deeper state of relaxation gently coming into the body and into your mind. As we continue to feel those light waves of peace rolling over the body, feel as if you're starting to move towards the center of the ocean of peace and becoming one with that sense of peace. And just allowing that practice just to gently taper away. And just bring yourself back into your breath once again, just noticing your breath. Noticing any change within your inner state, as we call it. And we're going to move into a little bit of heartfulness meditation for the next few minutes. So just gently allowing your awareness now to be taken towards your heart space. Just connecting into that source of light within your own heart. And as we see that light effulging from the heart, just allow yourself to have that effortless focus towards the heart space as we just mentally, now we're going to meditate on the heart just for a few minutes. Please start meditation. If you might find your mind wandering around or away at any time, just very lovingly bring your mind back in towards the heart space. Or if you find that there's many thoughts coming up to the surface, just acknowledge that they're coming up just to be let go of, and try not to give them attention as they let themselves free from your mind. And as we come towards the end of the meditation, just continue to keep your eyes closed just for another minute or two. Just take this time to note your experience that you had during the meditation practice. But also to note that whatever change that you might have felt from when we first started our little guided breathing, relaxation, ocean of peace meditation, and now some heartfulness meditation, just allowing the effect of that just to be absorbed into every part of your body, so that it becomes part of every cell, every part of your body becomes absorbed into that state of peace and contentment. And then in your own time, when you feel ready, please feel free to gently open your eyes. Maybe take another little moment here just to notice how you're feeling once again. Maybe take another moment just to note how you're feeling. If you're feeling different to what you felt earlier, maybe if you feel your condition feels a little better than what it was before. And if you would like to, you can just go into the chat and say if you feel, maybe if you're feeling a bit better now since we just did that little practice. So just feel if you'd like to put into the chat. I think you must all be in deep meditation still. I can't seem to be getting any answers coming up there. Okay. Okay, Jo has said that she's feeling so calm and peaceful. Lovely, Jo. That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that. So very nice. And someone said from Param, said, thank you, John, feeling very relaxed. Lovely, lovely to hear. So that's what we'd like to do through those practices, is to really get us into a state of relaxation, because, and Emma's saying she's feeling much better, not so fuzzy and much clearer. Lovely. Thank you, Emma. I'm glad to hear that as well. So yes, very good. And Vinod had said very deep. Lovely, Vinod. So good. I'm glad we've got a few people getting some nice experiences from there. That's great to hear. So I'm going to pass you over to Dr. Elizabeth Denley, the editor-in-chief in charge of the Heartfulness magazine, who's going to cover this evening for us the Ashtanga yoga, or the 8 limbs of Patanjali's Ashtanga yoga, and a little bit how heartfulness comes into play with his 8 limbs of yoga. So welcome, Elizabeth, and I'll pass this over to you now.
Thanks, John, and thank you for that lovely session. I'm so relaxed, it's going to be hard to speak, but anyway, I'll do my best. So, hi, everybody. We're going to explore a little bit what yoga has to offer. I'm sure many of you are aware of a lot of these things already. I just would like to share a little bit how we go about doing this in Heartfulness. So many of you would have heard of Patanjali, who in some ways is the granddaddy of yoga. I mean, he wasn't the first yogi, but he did an amazing job a few thousand years ago of compiling all the yogic knowledge that was around into a set of systems and writing these incredible yoga sutras, which we still study today and give us a lot of understanding of what yoga is. And of course, he starts at the beginning by saying, you know, once we come to yoga, we have the definition of yoga, and he gives that, and he says that yoga, in his view, is chitta vritti nirodha. And what does that mean? Essentially, what he's saying is that yoga is the stilling or the cessation of all the activity and vibrations in our field of consciousness, in our mind. So we're going from activity and chaos and craziness and stress and everything else into stillness. And that what comes out of this stillness is union. Union with the universal consciousness, union with everybody else on the planet, with every other being on the planet, union of body, mind, and soul within us. The whole thing about yoga is integration. And that's what we're all doing here. We're trying to understand, and we may come from different approaches. Some people may feel very comfortable starting with the physical body, doing asanas and pranayama. Other people may be interested more in starting with the mind through meditation, others through character development, through yama and niyama. It doesn't matter. We all come from a perspective that we need to. And eventually we move from our starting point, wherever that is, to integrating the whole lot together. And when we meditate, when we do what we just did with John, we actually integrate all these steps as well, which we're going to do as a little exercise a little bit later on. But let's start with what Patanjali's 8 limbs are and why they're all important. So remember, we're looking at the well-being, the balance of the physical body, our mental body, what we call the Sukshma Sharira in yoga, or the subtle body, the astral body, it has many names. And then the causal body, which is associated with the soul of our existence. So the first of the steps in Ashtanga yoga is what we call yama. And yama is often thought of as good conduct. In our system, it's really described as being the removal of all the unwanted tendencies, all the habits that we don't like, all the things that block our growth, our development. And it's all about behavior, conduct, habits. And of course, these things are not always easy to change. And when we look at it, it's a bit horrifying because you look at what the yamas are, and we'll do that in a minute. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is our starting point. Where am I? How am I going to get through this? And that's where Heartfulness, I think, has a great methodology at helping us to deal with these things. So yama, if you like, is to remove all the negative tendencies, all the tendencies in ourselves that are not evolutionary and not towards growth, and not towards integration. Niyama, as the word says, is the opposite. Niyama is cultivating those good habits and good qualities and behaviors that are going to help us to grow. So both these, yamas and niyamas, are about our character, are about our behavior, are about our habits in day-to-day life as well as in our yogic practice, but very much in day-to-day life, which we'll see. Then we move to the third of the limbs of yoga, which is asana, which many people start with when they start a yogic practice. And these are all the postures that we do for the well-being of the body. And there have been lots and lots of scientific studies done on the effect of yogic asanas on blood pressure, on which it has the most phenomenal effect, on all sorts of measures of physical well-being and also mental well-being. But the main focus of asana is to create physical health and physical well-being and balance in the body, which we'll talk about in a little while. The fourth limb is pranayama, which we generally think of as breath regulation. It's much more than that, but it's to do with the energy field in our body, what we call the pranamaya kosha in yoga, the way energy moves in our system, which John did a little bit with you before this. And, you know, there are different flows in the body. There are the 5 vayus, energy moving upwards, energy moving downwards, energy integrating through digestion, energy moving up into the higher chakras and all the circulatory systems. So again, pranayama is about balancing the energy field in our body. And it's important because the energy field is where our chakras sit. It's where the heaviness sits in our system that then affects our physical body. So it's an important part of how we manage health. The fifth step is like a very pivotal step in yoga, what we call pratyahara. And pratyahara is the minute or is the time or the situation where we turn inwards. Up until now, we've been looking at ourselves in daily life. With pratyahara, we turn our senses inwards and we go in generally into meditation or into prayer or into some sort of practice where we start to explore the inner universe. And then the last three steps, which are known as samyama in yoga, dharan, dhyan, and samadhi, are where we really move into the field of meditation or Raja Yoga. And that's where we start in heartfulness, in fact. And the reason we start there and the reason why this methodology is so amazing, which you'll see as we go through these, is that it's very hard to change habits. It's very hard to start to create behaviors that you like in yourself unless you can learn to work with your own mind first. And especially when I say the mind, I also mean the emotions. I'm going to ask you a question now, and you can write in the chat or whatever, but how easy is it to meditate when you're angry? Can somebody share their experience on that? Has anyone tried that? Yeah, Danielle is saying not possible. Anyone else not easy at all? And that's because everything is disturbed in the energy field. And so once we learn how to manage that, yeah, Michael's saying I stopped because it seemed to exacerbate the anger. And we'll talk about that in the next masterclass, how to reduce that instead of exacerbating it. So, iPhone said need to release first. Yes, and that's one thing that we do is show you how to release those emotions, how to manage and to master those emotions. So these last three steps start, first of all, with mental focus, being able to turn the mind from multiple thoughts to one thought, and then going below thought, diving deeper than thought into what we call meditation, dhyan, and then eventually reaching that state within us at the center of our being, the balanced state of samadhi. So we know this from Ashtanga yoga. Most of you will have heard these terms before. You may have practiced some of them, not others. Doesn't matter. Everyone has a different starting point. If we look at the yamas, what are they? I mean, the first one is, if you can master this, you've sort of mastered the whole thing anyway. The first one is ahimsa, what we call non-violence. It's a very important concept in Buddhism as well as Hinduism and definitely in yoga. This idea of having enough self-mastery and self-management that you don't get angry, that you don't feel resentful, you don't have any violent thoughts towards anybody. So if somebody's hurting you or if somebody's done something to betray you or whatever, there's no sense of retaliation or justification or whatever. It's already a very high state. Second one, truthfulness, satya. Third one, honesty, not stealing, asteya. And when I say not stealing, I don't just mean stealing possessions from another person, but stealing another person's ideas, stealing another person's partner. There are so many ways. If you look at the fashion world, the whole of fashion is based on the lack of asteya, on people wanting to copy other people. The whole of FOMO, what we call FOMO in the modern world, of wanting what other people have, is all based on stealing ideas, stealing fashion, wanting what other people have. This concept is it's really, really ingrained in our culture without us even knowing it. And yoga says, no, come back to having truthfulness, authenticity, being your own person, not wanting to steal another person's life, another person's image, etc. The fourth one is brahmacharya, the moderation of senses. It's often translated as celibacy, but that's a bit of a rigid definition. Eventually, celibacy becomes important in yoga, but in Heartfulness, we really follow the path of family living, where sexuality is considered very normal and procreation is normal. And, you know, we don't try and force people into restricting a natural urge when that's not necessary as a way of advancing in yoga. So there are different understandings of brahmacharya, but in our system, it's really about moderating your senses, not overindulging any of your senses. And that can be around food, it can be around all sorts of things, not just sexuality. And then the fifth one, aparigraha, which is having an attitude of non-possessiveness, which means being able to let go, being able to live and let live. So this is the very, very first step in Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, this idea of yama, to get rid of violence, to get rid of untruthfulness, of lying, of indulgence, and of possessiveness. But the way we do this is through meditation and through a complementary practice, which we know of as cleaning, which we'll talk about in the next session, which allows us to let go from an inner level, from a much deeper level, rather than having to do it in an external or forceful way. The second of the limbs, niyama, focuses on those qualities we want to cultivate. The first one is shaucha, purity of body and mind, which is the starting place really for all our meditative practices. We don't meditate in the morning with a cluttered, heavy mind. It doesn't work for a start. As Michael pointed out, if you're angry when you meditate, it exacerbates it. It seems to make it worse because you're focusing on the emotions. So the first one is purity. Second one, santosha, is contentment and inner happiness, which comes from a meditative practice. And we'll talk about that more too. Third one is tapas, or what we call penance. And by that, we don't mean, you know, sometimes when you think of the old yogis doing their penances on beds of nails or doing very, very austere practices, we don't mean that. We're talking about learning how to develop a sense of discipline and remove those things from our lives that are not necessary, unwanted things. So often that can be desires, it can be just dealing with the ups and downs of everyday life. You know, colleagues at work who give you a hard time, or the struggles of family life. Think about now with what's happening with, you know, finances in Australia. I mean, a lot of people are struggling financially. They're struggling to pay mortgages. They're having to prioritize what to pay for their kids' school uniforms, food, everything. I mean, all this can be considered under this category of tapas, and how we deal with it, how we go through life in a balanced way so that these things don't pull us too much. The fourth one is a real favorite of mine, and it's something I think that Western psychology has really focused on in a good way. Yoga also does very, very deeply if you follow a yogic practice seriously. And that's what we call swadhyaya, self-study. What John tried to do with us with the check-ins of going inside and looking at, how do I feel right now? And what's changed in me? What's changed in the energy flows in my system, in my emotions? Am I able to settle my emotions into a centeredness so that the extremes, the ragged edges, the jaggedness can settle down into something more stable? And this we do through meditation itself, of course, and also through journaling, through discussion with other people. Some people go through therapy. There are many ways for self-study, but it's a very important aspect of yoga. And then the fifth one, Ishwa Pranidhan, which is this concept of surrendering to the highest, to the ultimate, to God. And it's something which is, if you feel comfortable with the concept of God, is fine. If you don't, it's also fine. You can think of it more as your own higher self. There's no reason to struggle over this one, or any of them for that matter at this stage. This is all an evolution. The third limb of yoga, asana, started with Patanjali and the old yogis as a stable sitting position. And I've just put the sutra here from Patanjali. Sthira Sukham Asanam. So what does this mean? It means to create a steady, stable, comfortable, relaxed posture, sitting position. Asana means to sit. So we create this so that the body is turning inwards, is stable, is steady. And therefore, when we want to go deeper inwards ourselves through meditation, the body is in harmony with that. It's in sync with that. So I've just given one example here of Siddhasana, which is a classic meditation asana. Of course, what's happened, especially in the last 800 years, and even more so in the last 150 years, is that the whole science of asana, of movement of the body and of posture, has developed enormously and has been cultivated through many yoga schools. For example, the Krishnamacharya Yoga School in India, the Bihar School, where yogis originally, you cannot sit in meditation all day. It just isn't good for your body. So they realized they had to move, they had to look after their health. And the science of asana today is much more advanced than it's ever been. And the health benefits of different asanas for chronic illnesses and many other things are being used across the world now. For example, the NHS in the UK uses asana as a way of managing chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes, etc. So this science has flourished, and we have such a rich literature today as a result of that, which we've never had in yoga before. And we have pranayama. So we did a breathing exercise with John. And the idea of that mindful breathing that he did with us was to help us balance our system. But prana is much more than breathing. In fact, I've just put a quote here from Swami Vivekananda. It's part of a quote. The whole quote's really long and I wanted to put it, but it's just too much for one slide. But look at what he says. He says, prana stands for the sum total of the energy that is in the universe. And those of you who know anything about physics will know that there are different states. There's matter, there's energy, and then there's what we call the vacuum or the void. And in yoga, that vacuum or void is known as space or akash. And prana is known as energy. And matter is just seen as a solidification of energy. So Swami Vivekananda says this universe, according to the theory of the philosophers, proceeds in the form of waves. It rises and again it subsides, melts away as it were. Then again it proceeds out in all this variety. Then again it slowly returns. So you can imagine it's going out. It's returning inwards. It's going out. It's returning inwards, just like the energy flows in our body. So it goes on like a pulsation. It is this prana acting upon akasha, so energy acting upon space, which creates this universe. And after the end of a period called a cycle, there is a period of rest. One period of activity is followed by a period of rest. This is the nature of everything. This is also the nature of our breath. So this is what we're working with in pranayama. We're working with these flows, pulsating flows of energy that are constantly moving through our system. John mentioned earlier when we were doing the breathing to see whether your left or your right nostril was more active, because this tells us something. The nadis tell us something. So when the right nostril is more active, the Surya Nadi is active, it means that energy is flowing outwards from our system. And it's active. It's how we want to be in the morning. It's how we want to be when we're joyful, when we're going about our day doing lots of stuff. Unfortunately, if we get stuck in that mode, we end up in stress mode, in fight or flight mode. But it's a very natural state to be joyful, to be active, to be energetic in the day. And then the other cycle, of course, is the inward returning rest cycle, the parasympathetic Chandra Nadi cycle, which allows us to go back into a deeper inner state. And of course, it's much easier to meditate in that state than it is when our energy is going outwards. So this science of prana is something that yoga does, again, very, very well. We'll talk about a technique that we use in Heartfulness in the last session called transmission, which helps our prana to settle inwards. And it's a yogic technique of a very, very high order that allows us to go inwards and meditate more effectively. Pratyahara, as I mentioned, is the turning inwards. And this is where we turn away from the world outside and focus our attention inwards, away from the senses, so that we can then meditate. And that meditation involves, first of all, dharana, which is focusing on one thing, from all the thoughts to one thought. And John mentioned at the beginning of the meditation that we were focusing on the source of light in our heart that's attracting us from within, turning our attention inwards. To hold one thought isn't an easy thing always, but that's the process of dharana, holding, of allowing us to start this process of diving deeper into dhyana or meditation. And meditation takes us beyond the thought. The thought's just, if you like, the springboard. And then we want to go into a state where we experience, where we feel that source of light, that essence, that life force in our hearts. And that we know as meditation. And it takes us deeper and deeper and deeper until eventually we move into the state where we become one with the center of our being. There are various levels of it in yoga. If you've studied Patanjali, you'll know he talks about different states of samadhi. But samadhi means to be one with that original condition, that original yogic state of union. And that's what we experience in Heartfulness, sometimes even from the very first meditation. It's profoundly deep. And the one thing that I've learned is that by doing all these things together every time we meditate, by focusing on purity of mind with yama and niyama, by having an asana that's beautifully relaxed and yet upright, allowing the flows of energy, by allowing the prana in our system through pranayama to be balanced, to be flowing naturally, by turning our attention in through pratyahara, and then by focusing on one thought in dharana, diving deeper into the experience of it in dhyan, we eventually reach samadhi and the goal of yoga. So this is what we're going to share with you over the next 2 masterclasses, some practices that will help us experience this. It's an amazing journey. It's a simple, simple system. And the beauty of it is that there are trainers who offer services free of charge so that everyone is supported And as trainers, we also meditate with each other so that we get support as well. It's an ecosystem. It's a network of people all meditating, all focusing on their own development, who support each other, who share with each other, and who therefore help each other to make the journey much simpler, much smoother, and much sweeter. So that's all I want to share with you at this stage. What I'd like us to do, just for, again, a minute, because I know we're coming to the end of the session, is if we can all just close our eyes again, or if you like, just gaze in front of you. Go into your heart and just see if you can experience the condition, the feeling of what is happening in your heart right now. Let the thoughts just pass like clouds in the sky. Don't worry about the thoughts. See if you can just go a little bit deeper to the feeling level. And ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? There's no right or wrong answer. You may have a lot of movement in your heart, or you may have stillness. Both are okay. You may feel calm, or you may feel restless. Both are okay. Just observe whatever it is. Remember that your heart is your laboratory, and you are the experimenter. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. And if you feel like it, you can share in the chat how you feel. Okay, so any questions? Thank you, Michael. Next time we'll focus on some other aspects, especially the cleaning aspect, which allows us to remove heaviness and especially emotional entanglements from the system. Emma has written a peaceful feeling that all is okay. Great. That's a great way to feel that all is okay, especially it's easy to feel it right now. It's harder in the midst of a chaotic morning at work, but it's a great place to start. Anyone else like to share anything or ask a question? Either of John or myself?
Elizabeth, I have a question for you. How important is the niyama of swadhyaya in regards to, say, personal development, personal evolution, if you might like to call it that way, or yoga practice. If we're talking, because in yoga we're talking about the expansion of consciousness, expansion of prana, understanding or awareness. So how important is this aspect of swadhyaya?
It's really important. But the thing is, it's also something that comes to you naturally. And, it's not something to be forced. For example, if you're feeling horrible, and it can happen, sometimes you'll have a meditation and it'll bring up stuff that's maybe old stuff. Could be from your childhood. It could be from, if you believe in past lives, from past lives. Really feelings that not necessarily you're ready to deal with at that moment in time. It's not that you would force yourself to have to look at that and understand it, not at all. But what it does is it gives you this amazing ability to let things come and process them as they're surfacing naturally. We don't look for self-analysis, but what we do is, as things emerge from within, we're able to observe them as a result of meditation, because through the practice of meditation, we learn how to observe the inner universe much better. And, we observe all our weaknesses and things as well, but we learn to do that with a lot of self-acceptance and a lot of self-compassion, so that instead of judging and instead of feeling guilty because, oh my God, I've still got this habit, I still can't change this behavior or whatever, like, for example, of getting angry and yelling at somebody, or, or of always feeling like people are victimizing me, or whatever it is. We all have different tendencies, and that's normal, that's human. But what happens is that we learn to be able to face them in a way of saying, okay, let me move past this. Let me let go of this. This idea in yoga of what's called vairagya, of letting go and of being able to accept who I am as I am, which is the first step in being able to change and move towards something that is a better version of myself. So I think it's super important, but it's not something where you have to be rigid or, authoritarian about it. It just happens. It will happen as part of the process, especially if you're a little bit disciplined and you write a diary. It's much easier if you write a diary, because the act of writing or drawing helps stuff come into consciousness also.
Lovely. That was my next question, actually, was how important is journaling and writing a diary in this observation, or this swadhyaya, as we call it?
It's very helpful, John. Not everybody's like a word person. Some people are better at drawing, and that's okay. But to put whatever is going on inside you on paper helps you to observe. It develops your observational skills. It develops your sensitivity. Just the act of doing it as a discipline every day is a really, really helpful thing. Not just for meditators. I mean, if you read Julia Cameron's The Art of Creation, she advises it for all creative people, for example. It's just an incredibly useful tool for self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-compassion.
Yes, and I know that in some of the leadership, in some of the corporates, that they'll talk about journaling also just to sort of manage stress in one level, but also maybe to manage, because it's a way of being able to deal with issues that you might be having at mind, and you can sort of put them down on paper, sort of put them to the side for a while, and even possibly during sleep, that can come up to the surface and you can solve problems or get some answers. Is that something that you've ever experienced yourself or had?
And even in meditation too, sometimes, like, I'll have an issue, I'll have a problem that I need to solve, and I write it down, and then maybe 3 days later or 4 days later in meditation, boom, up comes the solution. It's like, oh, okay, just because you've put it out there to the universe, and now you're open to solutions coming. And they come, or they might come in a conversation that you have with somebody, and you're not even expecting it, and then suddenly somebody's telling you something, or you'll open a book and you'll find the answer in the book. It's like the universe is conspiring to help you because you've done that.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? So
Mm.
is that like, is it because when you put the thought out there, that is it that you then, is it, do you create a whirlpool, or do you create a void and that sort of tracks something, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's like, we'll talk about this in another class because you know, this could go on for hours, but this idea of intention or sankalpa in yoga, which is very much that because thought is energy, right? Thought
Yes.
is prana. When you throw a thought out, you're throwing energy out. And so, of course, it's going to create an effect in some way and it will attract what needs to come back.
Oh, okay. That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for that explanation of Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga and where heartfulness falls into the samana practices of that, and how that's so helpful in also. And I know that when we talk about Patanjali's yoga practices, like, we have the bottom up practices, which is the asana and the pranayama, which work with the physical body and lead us up into coming into the mind and relaxing the mind, etc. But then we have the samana practice, such as heartfulness meditation, sankalpa, swadhyaya, top down practices, which then also affect the nervous system, affect the digestive system, of course, because when we relax, the digestion gets better. When the mind has clarity, we're able to think and have a bit more focus on doing things, etc. So this is a beautiful thing about, Patanjali's Eightfold Path, that it sort of is a system that is incorporating all these elements that can sort of work on different doorways to help us gain our health and well-being.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, what a mind that guy must have had to just come up with this whole structure by pulling everything that had been there in yoga together into these sutras. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, if there was no other questions there from anyone, yes, it's gone 7:07, so we've gone a few minutes over, but we just started a few minutes late. So thank you everyone for joining in this evening. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's been a lovely session, so much enjoyable. Always love to listen to you present on things. And we look forward to next Friday evening on the 23rd, where we have session 2, where we're going to go into the psychology of yoga. And that's going to be something quite exciting. So we look forward to that. If you're interested in knowing about the psychology of yoga, please come and join us. We'll do another, we'll talk a little bit about the cleansing practices, as Elizabeth mentioned before, and how we can do cleaning of the heaviness that we might get into our pranayama system, into the mind, and how we can remove those through the heartfulness practices. And then we'll go into, Elizabeth's going to elaborate on the psychology of yoga. So thank you everyone for joining. It'll be the same link as today's session. So please come and join us at 6 p.m. on Friday, and we look forward to seeing you all then. Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.